Hey guys, Philosophy JKD here, back once again. I guess you can call this part two of One Piece in the light of the Law of One. Okay. I left out a lot in the first video on this topic in particular because of time constraints and responsibilities. However, um, One Piece to me is a tool. Anime is about world building, character development, progression, but also when a person looks at the anime deeper, we see synchronicities. For example, in the last video, I talked about 1981 being the creation of the Georgia Guidestones, but also the beginning of the great work called the Law of One, the raw material. But other synchronicities that were very interesting in the real world, but also in script, in text, but also mask a world that most of us don't even see. On the last video, I talked about how the Greeks called Jesus, Yeshua, HaMashiach, how he opened a blind man's eyes to see a world we couldn't normally see. However, when John the Baptist, his cousin, who was baptizing people with water in the wilderness and living the best pious life he could possibly live to his knowledge level, was seeking to be blessed by Jesus, Jesus said, "No, I need you to do something for me." Therefore, he baptized them to fulfill that responsibility and rites of passage, wherein Jesus' eyes were open and a dove, they called it dove, but in Egypt it would have been a hawk or a falcon, came down on Jesus and opened him up to see the world around him, where now he could see the serpentine beings around him, which one that the Bible allegorically calls Satan begins to test him, brings him up to an allegedly very high place after testing him through starvation to turn the stones into the bread and make water out of nothing. And he said, "You're not going to tempt me. I mean, that's not what I'm here to be doing. You're not going to tempt me." But he brought him up to a very high place. Just like I said in my second or third video, the One Piece, in my perspective, is a fractal observation platform where you can look down on lower densities and see everything, but not just see it, but influence it. So this Satan person brought Jesus up to a very high place. And they say the four corners of the earth, but we know that there's no corners on a circle. It's a very high place where you can see north, south, east, west, or as we say, news, north, east, west, south. Okay, it's a 360-degree structure. It's not a square, but he was able to look down through time as other people in the ancient text, Islamic text, the Old Testament, and the example with Abraham going back into the land of Egypt, and his descendants being told by his Lord what not to do based on what his ancestors did. In the books of Enoch, they talked about the redoing of things. The angels questioned the Lord of hosts or Lord of spirits about putting man on earth so they can make war fair like we did. And the Lord of hosts says, "I know things that you will never know." And emerald tablets, there are many of them. However, there's renditions, okay, where things repeat, okay, but then um, there are renditions where things repeat and have slight modifications, but there's also redoing of things through cycles. We see that today with rises and falls of civilization. We see that in One Piece, for example, Arlong Park. They create their own little groups to develop themselves to a level of power where and eventually they begin to suck the energy out of the people. We saw that in Dressrosa. Doflamingo did basically more than Arlong, but we're seeing more of the picture. And Wano, Kaido did a very similar thing, but used his own methodology in order to suppress the people and gain power. Now we're seeing it with the higher ups of the world government. The military, oddly enough, is not being coined as necessarily the oppressive force at the higher levels, but in lower levels, clearly there were Marines collaborating with Arlong, with the Fishermen Pirates. Not the Fishermen Pirates, but the Arlong Pirates. They're a break off from the original group of Fisher Tiger. But my point is, there's hidden fractal things. Um, uh, for example, in 1897 in Cairo, Egypt, there was another synchronicity where the body of Pharaoh was found in the sea, based on the composition of the salt composites. A body of Pharaoh was found and put in the Cairo Museum. Oddly enough, synchronicity. That's the same time where Theodore Herzl in 1987 in a place called Basel, Sweden, also created the Zionist movement. Not saying that they're a totally bad organization. It's a political organization, you know. So you have double gangers. I'm gonna give you maybe one or two more just for time's sake, because I want this to be a short video. We see the synchronicity of the One Piece. If you can look at One Piece and open your mind and use it as a tool to build out your mind space, to observe things with open eyes, or a larger perspective, if you will. Example, in the book of Matthew in the New Testament, okay, what Muslims call the Injil, Jesus was on the mountain with a few of his disciples, and they saw beings come down and commune with him. That goes all the way back to the writings of Thoth, saying how if there were two divine people, I would be there. That also goes into the Old Testament, saying when two or more people are gathered, the Spirit of God will dwell amongst them. In the Islam, they call it fitra, where multiple people talk about God, and then the Spirit of God comes down upon them. Or they say, if two or more people are there, the Spirit of God will come. If two or more divine beings are there, I'm already there. So on the mountain, different scholars see it different ways. Some say it's Enoch. Some say, I've heard some say Moses. I don't agree with that, but it doesn't really matter. It's more about the food, It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter the ingredients in it. We just know that it's good, and there's something to be gained from eating that food. Scholarly, I look at it as Elijah of the Old Testament. Elijah comes back, the student. Elijah was taken up and didn't die. Okay. However, at that point in time, Elijah was interpreted to be a transfigured being like Jesus and Enoch. But we know scholarly Elijah was actually John the Baptist at a time when John the Baptist was in prison, but not even dead yet. So time doesn't flow in a linear way the way people think. Time just doesn't. People that are in that world, for example, I started doing remote viewing through knowledge gained from Major Ed Daines in the Army. Okay, so and I found out I was really good at it and learned things. It opened up a whole world of knowledge to me. Okay, so when I get information, I can vet it differently than other people. For example, like I'm not gonna go too. I'll go into that maybe in the future. I don't want to scare you guys away. I'm not a boogeyman, but at the same time, everything is known. I don't believe in aliens. I don't think aliens exist because at a certain perspective, all things are known. An alien is something we're not aware of. There's no way aliens exist if we all came from the same source and there are people higher up that have that fractal look down to see everything below them. It's not alien to them. It's only alien to the levels and the boundaries that we set to our knowledge base. So if John the Baptist can exist on multiple levels, it's like I said in the last video, the law of one, we are just a little droplet of a larger sea, if you will. We have fragmented consciousness as a test in order to basically fashion ourselves or be um, cut stones, if you will, if you use a Masonic perspective, from an uncut stone into a cut stone, you know, to be a very precious pearl through the work that we're doing right now. It's not just spiritual, it's also physical, because the physical senses you have enhance the spiritual interpretations that can come from dealing with the stimuli. However, when we go at the origins of this thing, the spiritual manifests flesh. But there's an interaction between our mind, our body, and our spirit. But some people will call that spiritual energy a soul. But in my understanding, um, in my head canon, okay, to have a spirit of your own and a soul, to be a living soul, a soul means you have to have flesh of your own and a spirit of your own. So if you don't have a spirit of your own, you're not necessarily a living soul. So that's a crazy idea. So people that aren't even awake, some people say they're the living dead or walking dead, or in the Bible, Jesus says, let those bed their bury their own dead. Well, they're on a dead level, okay? If a upright perpendicular is 90 degrees, they're raising straight up on a straight and narrow path. But for people that will never think about anything, never challenge anything, have no genetic memory that they've activated, what progress on a spiritual level can they make? That means they become a foundation on a physical level where they exist, but they become the inhabitants, or the meek will inherit that earth. Those who work on a spiritual level will maintain on a spiritual level, okay? And if their spiritual level ceases to expand to higher levels, you can say they're a foundation. And for people in that society, they say that's the difference between the greater mystery and the lesser mystery. The greater mystery are those people that seek to become cut stones, and the lesser mystery are those who just seek to accept things in the culture of it. They built the culture out. You know, I met a person that was into tarot cards, and I just happened to know about them because even in the Law of One, they talk about how they gave us those systems in Egypt of the tarot cards. But that person wasn't ready to hear that because it would have destroyed the whole culture that that person had entered into. And that's why we have to be so careful when people don't jump into the arena to become a gladiator, not just to fight against an external, but the real fight is with yourself, unlocking, if you will, the seals, unlocking the keys, okay? And I'm just one key amongst infinite amount of keys that you can gain if you put in the work in order to unlock our true potential, which is really infinite. Once we set on that journey to infinity, we can choose to jump off that journey, or we can continue just to blast off into infinity. And like they said in the Law of One, those who possess the law of love seek the law of light. That's Satan's doctrine, the Pharisees. Okay? To Jesus' doctrine, the light. And those who possess the law of light seek the law of one. Those who possess the law of one seek the law of foreverness, which we would call infinity. Okay? And they said, at that point, we don't know what's beyond infinity. Going back to the scriptures, the angels asked the Lord of Spirits, are you going to do this? Because they can see the cycles of time being in the infinite. But they said, look, I exist beyond your universe. I exist beyond creation. I know things that you in the aggregate will never know. So that's the law of one. If we can look at One Piece or any anime that we're really looking at with the eyes wide open, with a vast amount of knowledge, a vast amount of spiritual awareness, being willing to empty our cup and look at whatever's presented to us with eyes open, and willing to put some of the big sake in our cups or water in our cups so we may drink that and really digest it, you know, because there's a blessing for people that seek to do work, or people that seek to understand, if you will. So there's doppelgangers, which is synchronistic of this great energetic competition or game that's going on. In Star Wars, we had the Sith and the Jedi. And here we have negative people that are in service to themselves with the implosion and deeper into the depths of darkness, the inner mysteries of what they call in Revelations, the so-called inner mysteries of Satan. And you go into the books of Matthew, the people that follow Jesus, Paul, being of the Pharisees, said, I don't see a difference between the so-called elect of Christ. To me, there's no difference between his group and my group. And some people think Paul was an apostle. He was not apostle, but the Bible has been constructed with higher knowledge. The minor factoids, I believe, for the most part, are insignificant, and that they can be glossed over and still get a comprehensive understanding of what's actually going on. UFOs, space travel, that's all in the gospel. Whether it be Enoch, the seventh person mentioned in the text, or whether it be Abraham going back from Chaldea into Egypt, saw UFO battles, and he said, if I get back to Egypt safely, then Yahweh will be my God. That's when he actually chose that particular side of the coin. But because many people are in their little intellectual ghettos or theological seminary, so they can't see that. It's glossed over. It's almost like when I would study scripture, not just the canonized scripture. I'm talking about scripture in the history of Jesus. Jesus was never a Christian per se, but I wanted to understand how he did and woke himself up. His journeys to India, Tibet, and to Egypt, and what was gained there, and on top of that, his opposition openly. He said, "Look, I'm coming here to you guys, and I come to bring you life more abundantly. However, I am being opposed on this planet by those who love the death. They are an inversion of what I come to do." And that's what's really going on here. And I'm here a little too early, but I'll be back again. So, is this our first rodeo? If we recognize that we come back, Joy Boy comes back. If we were told exactly what the previous Joy Boys did, I see so far we have 3 Joy Boys in One Piece. We have one that stayed for a very, very short time, and then we have the one that is connected to Oars. And we don't know what he did when he came back the second time. And I think that's been hidden away from us. Perhaps it will happen after we learn about the One Piece. So it's not a spoiler per se, because people are looking at this thing from every angle that they can perceive. Okay. So Jesus comes back. Jesus even said, look, in the future, there's an Antichrist who is to come, who already is here currently and was in the past. John the Baptist was physically there at the time of Christ, 2,000 years ago. But he also was projected into a spherical, eternal body on the mountain where the disciples said, let us build a tabernacle for you guys. Let us build a place for you guys to dwell in and be sheltered from the outside world. Okay? But also we learned that John the Baptist was Elijah in the Old Testament. So we are not limited to 3 comings. In the Law of One, it says, and this is a code on the back of our dollar bill, because the founding fathers, because of the origins of the information they were getting, but also it was known on this planet as well. I'm not saying the founding fathers are aliens, okay? What I'm saying, we knew this and worldwide on this planet, okay? People go and they look at the Dogon, okay? We just learned about Sirius B. To the Dogon, they were keeping record of these different comings of celestial things in different shacks that gave them actual number of times where they're going back. They knew about Sirius A, Sirius B, and Sirius C. They call Sirius B Kuzi Uzi. But when you go to Egypt, who adopted that, they called it the dog star, in which the Ark of the Contract, what's in the Torah, became the Ark of the Covenant. So once we get enough knowledge on certain things, we have the right angle in order to lift it up with a master's grip or with a lion's paw that is the guardian of the secrets of heaven, if you will. In such a way, we get more knowledge and wisdom, and we don't get caught into these intellectual ghettos where we begin to fight each other on little minor things. Those minor differences, even though I say they're irrelevant, they're there on purpose. It's another fashioning out of this whole program that we have going on, being sent here by a higher power. We have these differences on purpose. It's our job to adapt, overcome, and find commonality where we can coexist, you know? Because if somebody knows all things, okay, but makes a program that is separated from itself with free will, imagine the mind of that being. Imagine the comprehension. Imagine the selflessness of that being. I know everything that could happen, but I want to create something that has free will and will work out the kinks in it. And I send those spirits out there into the world to come back to me reformed in a way. So there's no theological seminary, there's no secret society that, in my understanding, I would say has absolute truth, because we all see through a color darkly. Um, Thomas Jefferson, while he wasn't a Mason, he was an Odd Fellow. There are other groups out there. There are Rosicrucian connections to him too, actually, but that's neither here nor there. So One Piece, this is what I want to put back on it. Okay, like I said, I believe that the Gorosei and Emu are actually quarantined, or they're being held in some type of fashion, not just by the oaths that they have in order to get their power, because there are rites of passage in order to reach higher levels. Okay, some people, like in the Book of Matthew, they say swear no oaths, because there's times in history where we basically get something like jump off points where we don't have to go through the same pathway other people did. Other people did the work for us. They did the sacrifice, so we don't have to atone for that particular type of thing. So, like in Revelation, they say eventually in the future there'll be no crafts, there'll be no craftsmen. The lion will lay down with the lamb. You know, so that's a telltale sign of things to come. I think I'm bullish. I'm bullish on the future of humanity. There may be some bumps in the road, but no matter what we get into, if we delve into it, just like I used to sit down when I was a kid, listen to Cannabis song, and I would have to rewind his songs to get the word. Once I got the word, I get the understanding. Once I get the understanding, if I listen to the whole comprehensive work, I get an understanding where he's coming from, but I also get what he's saying. And that's probably why they dumb down rap, because I'm a rap fan. It's that's my joy boy music. It just enlightens me. It has a high amount of verbiage and the least amount of space, so people can look at it and get so much information without a elongated thing. It's been freed from the hook, which is like a spell. The hook is a catch. A gosh a gosh spell is a spell based on what those people are saying. Okay, it doesn't mean that it's all 100% historically accurate, because in my knowledge, um, the Bible is not historically accurate. If you go back to Genesis till now, that's 6,000 years. You think humans only been here 6,000 years? If you go to talk to people in Egypt, we find out that, like in the Quran, it's wrong that historically also. But in terms of the light of science outside of archaeology, they both are solid. They both have higher science and wisdom, politics, political science, zoology, chemistry, astronomy, astrology, um, bio, biology. I already said zoology, but it's all there. So, yeah, I just wanted to put this out there just because I feel I didn't do a good enough job the last one, because I left a lot out, I made it a little bit longer, but in reality, um, there's doppelgangers. Theodore Herzl, 1897, created a massive movement, the most powerful movement on the planet, the Zionist movement, in Basel, Switzerland. At the same time, when you read texts, you said the Quran, and that same time, they found the body of Pharaoh now has been displayed for over 100 years in Cairo, Egypt. And those same groups that, through different groups like the Smithsonian Hermitage Foundation, would suppress ancient bones under the Native American Antiquities Act so people didn't know what was going on. They tried to stop excavations of like the Bosnian pyramids so people didn't know that, there's pyramids in Bosnia. But according to the Old Testament, they said there was a conflict between Esau and his brother Jacob, who later became Israel, and the Lord God came down himself and destroyed their towers, if you will. Their pyramids were known as towers to a higher level, either a physical plane or interdimensional plane, depending on how you had it set, and left them to the dragons of the wilderness. And that's why when you go north of Bosnia, there's no pyramids. They're all underneath the dragon of the wilderness, will be vegetation, soil, soot, you know, just like the pyramids in Antarctica. They are underneath ice, empire underneath the ice. So take it or leave it, or take it with a grain of salt. But it doesn't matter if you believe in the little factoids, because the anime, okay, the gospel writings from great authors that affect many people, even as fiction ones like Moby Dick, The Search for the Great White Whale, which oddly enough is the Whitebeard in the Moby Dick. He's riding the Whitebeard. So those things kind of seed, not kind of, they seed our consciousness, our subconscious, in such a way it's a catalyst for growth. Like it's a catalyst to continue to magnetize us strong enough that we make it to the destination for the next jump off point. So this has been philosophy. Um, this has been part 2 of One Piece in the Light of the Law of One and Synchronicity. And I hope you guys enjoyed it. Bye bye.